Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. It is through the computer screen. In today's article, we will be dealing with beauty from the point of view of the occult. I will try to explain the inner logic of the occult and the occult understanding of beauty. I will also show you some practical examples, but before I get to the question of beauty, I must briefly elaborate on what the occult actually is. I will use definitions from two great scientific authorities. Definitions from Milan Nakonečný, who is the founder of research of Czech and Czechoslovak occult history, and also definitions used by Antoine Fevre, a long-term head of Western Esotericism department in Sorbonne, Paris. According to Antoine Fevre, esotericism is a specific point of view on nature and space, which began in the Renaissance by interweaving Hermetic and Neoplatonic philosophy, Gnosticism, and Kabbalah. Esoteric point of view is specific in that it understands entire nature as living and connected by hidden nature and spiritual laws. These laws can be observed as so-called analogies. What is an analogy? Esotericists believe that astrological forces of the planets influence human nature, relationships, and destinies. But that is not all. They also believe that astrological laws must, just as physical laws, influence the form of Earth itself and life on Earth. For example, according to astrology, Venus influences human sexuality, romantic relationships, and friendships, creativity, independence, and material instincts. If we, on the other hand, view its influence as evolutionary, we shall view its influence on nature as beauty, variety, colorfulness, and soft shapes, etc. In the case of plants, it also represents the sweet and pleasant taste and nice smells. In the behavior of animals, its influences are similar to that of humans, that is sexuality, independence, and carelessness. In human body, Venus influences mostly its sexual apparatus, pancreas, stomach, and fingers. Among the animals which are under strong influence of Venus are the cat, dog, and rabbit. Among the plants, it's the rose, apple tree, and meliss. From the minerals is the beryl, sapphire, and emerald. From the metals, it's copper. We can therefore say that the rose, rabbit, and emerald have common characteristics. These rates are called analogies, and thanks to the analogies, we can examine the influences of different planets, zodiacs, elements, and other occult influences. And that is not all. Analogies are attracted to and empowered by each other. Therefore, we can use them to stimulate certain behaviors, social displays, and physical manifestations. In that case, we are speaking about magic. That circles us back to Fevre's definition, because Fevre says that another attribute of esotericism is the belief that we can observe and manipulate hidden laws of nature. But for that, special means are required, which are based upon changing of mind and improving of human esoteric abilities. Fundamental is the faith in transmutation, about which we shall speak later. Further, Nakonečný and other scientists, as Hanegraaff or Tyriacain, claim that they divide esotericism and esoteric organizations into two groups. The first group wants to understand hidden laws of the world, and with this gathered knowledge achieve self-improvement. Second group, which is traditionally called occult, wants to actively use these hidden laws and shape the reality. First group is passive, the second is active. The difference can be shown in the example of Mephistopheles. In classical occult, Mephistopheles is a demon. In postmodern occult is information or psychical projection, but that is not important. The point is that esotericist is happy with knowledge who Mephistopheles is, what he does, and how to not make him angry. Occultist will try to force Mephistopheles to fulfill his wishes and orders. Nakonečný therefore defines occultism and as individuals and organizations which research and actively use hidden laws of the world to achieve their goals. Such a goal can be an even bigger occult understanding or a pragmatic goal such as money, influence, power, woman, etc. The relationship between esotericism and the occult can be therefore drawn as two circles. The bigger one is the esoteric worldview, which is common for esotericists and occultists. Smaller one are the occultists, for whom the understanding and knowledge is not enough and wish to shape reality. Methods that allow humans to influence and shape reality are traditionally called occult sciences. The most known occult sciences are astrology, alchemy, and magic. Occult sciences have their own complicated methodologies and interpretation models. The last term which we need to explain is Hermetism. Nakonečný defines Hermetism as the oldest achieved form of the occult, which started in Egypt and the Hellenic world. That is why Hermetism is an entirely unique form of the occult, with the same philosophy, dogma, ethics, and logic. Hermetism is the smallest circle. Hermetism discovered the esoteric worldview, occult methods, and the theory of human transmutation. More than 2 millennia, however, caused esotericism to evolve into the abstract, and occultism pragmatically searched for new theories and methods how to achieve power to shape the world. Now we shall move to beauty. As we said, for the occult understanding of beauty, it is necessary to understand transmutation. We can simply define transmutation as a safe shift from lesser to greater, imperfection into perfection, death into living. We are interested mostly in the transmutation of the human into his greater form. Different occult currents use different names for this form. For example, space Adam, God-man, Superman, Hyperanthropos, etc. This concept was made in Hermetism. Antique mysteries promised humans that they can shape their own destiny and the afterlife if they follow specific rules and do specific rituals. They will not have to depend on the will of the gods. Hermetism took this promise and connected it with the ideals of apotheosis. Apotheosis is an ancient Greek word which describes a situation in which a hero or king is accepted to the Mount Olympus to live among the gods. In Hermetism, self-apotheosis, intentional self-transmutation, means that a human can become a god if he follows secret teachings of Hermetism and use occult sciences. Logic of the occult sciences is such that humans use their psychic powers for understanding and control of reality. However, for them to be able to analyze nature laws and for them to have enough power to shape reality, they must train and improve their psychic powers. Every attempt to shape reality is therefore an attempt to shape their personality, because change of personality is required for shaping reality. Lesser magical operations, such as sigil magic or such as the basic invocations, can be achieved by anyone with good textbooks, but greater magical operations can require even several years of preparations, and these preparations mean not only training and manipulations of one's own mind, but also, for example, years of special diets, abstinence, special daily regime, special sleep sequences, etc. What is the meaning of beauty for self-apotheosis and transmutation? In the occult, beauty actually has 3 dimensions. First dimension of beauty is beauty as a synonym for the creation. Its creative power, its laws, its perfection. In the branches of occult that work with the existence of God, it is synonyms with God. Therefore, when the occultist researches hidden laws of the world, he researches beauty. When he works with the supernatural, he works with beauty. When he tries to note into books, paintings, or stories what he knows about the world and the occult, he tries to make the results of his work to be beautiful. Sephiroth, also known as the Kabbalist tree of life, it's a map of occult understanding of the world, which the occult copied from the Kabbalah. Sephirothic tree is composed of Sephiroth. In Kabbalah, each Sephirah is an image of God. In modern occult, it's one dimension of reality. Sephiroth influence each other, and together they create the reality. In the Kabbalist tree of life, beauty has its own Sephirah, Tiferet. Sephirah, Tiferet, connects other Sephiroth and is in the center of the tree. Its main task is to balance Sephiroth, Chesed, Gevurah, Hod, and Netzach, which represents principles of giving, taking, intellect, and emotions. Only their balance can allow the creation of the world. In this conception, beauty is the first word, which was the beginning of everything. Each Sephirah is a unique world, populated with different beings and angels, which represent different forms and manifestations of Sephir. Netzach is ruled by Venas, which represent being that embodies beauty in the romantic, feminine, and sexual sense. All of these also have to be balanced in Tiferet, as they are emotional and impulsive. Only then God's beauty can be created. Second dimension of beauty is beauty that stimulates senses, emotions, and imagination. In the occult, changed state of consciousness, traditionally called trance, is requirement for complex perception of hidden laws of the world and manipulation of reality. And it is the experience and acquaintance that is the strongest and most effective means how to achieve trance. That is why occultists actively seek beauty and create beauty. The third dimension is combination of both of their prior, simply a presence of beauty in public space, architecture, and art have transmutation influence on humans. It improves their abilities to think, feel, and imagine. It's the expression of attraction about which we talked when we talked about analogies. The presence of holy, in other words, beautiful, attracts and stimulates the holy in humans. In an occultist intentionally seeks beauty, he researches beauty and uses beauty. It is a basic requirement for self-apotheosis. Self-apotheosis is, in this case, the shaping of mind, senses, supersensual perception, and its own nature in such a way as to allow oneself to perceive and experience even the most complicated and smallest expressions of beauty. Space Adam is a beautiful being, perceiving and experiencing all the forms of beauty. Notice that occultism does not try to formulate on definition of beauty, and definitions of beauty are not essential for occultism. Occultism understands beauty as functional and utilitarian. Trans-empirical understanding is beauty. Beauty allows the occultists to manipulate the reality, whatever improve him, as for him to understand beauty and therefore manipulate the reality is beauty. Occultists recognize beauty when they see it and experience it. In a minute, we shall show you some examples of these views of beauty. Now I must say that, in this understanding, beauty is not only pleasant and stimulating, it can also be disgusting and destructive. If we understand beauty as a system, energy, and laws which create the reality, then beauty is also disruptive, destructive, and deadly force. In occult understanding of the world, if we redraw it on Kabbalist seraphical tree, beauty has strong representation in Seraphot, just as in Clifford. The crown of the Kabbalist tree is the same as its roots, which make up the Clifford, and Clifford is a world of demons. Each Sephirah has its image in Cliffa, which represents its twisted and imperfect form. For example, Venus residing in Sephirah Netzach has its twisted version called Kedemel, which resides in Cliffa Obergzerek. Kedemel is just as beautiful as Venus, but its beauty is a beauty which is so sweet, fascinating, and concentrated that its end is deadly boredom or deadly obsession. In the form of obsession, Kedemel is a demon of perverted love and sexuality. Occultism can identify beauty in things and situations which are seemingly far away from beauty, or which are outright repulsive. Probably the most common usage of this inverted love is in sexual magic. Combination of the foul and sexual arousal increases and colors up the orgasm, and in sexual magic, orgasm is a shifted mind state which manipulates the reality. Now let's take a look at some examples of usage of occult understanding of beauty in a practice. Here you can see some examples of occult items from the antiquity. One of the most interesting is the doll punctured by nails from the collection of Louvre Museum. Most of you will probably associate dolls like this with voodoo, but dolls were actually never used in the traditional Haitian voodoo. That is a Hollywood invention. On the contrary, they were typical for traditional European magic since the antiquity up until the modern times. They are called volts, and they are used primarily for offensive and love magic. Another interesting piece is the papyrus in the background. It is a spell for getting a woman. The magician even included instruction says, wrap her hair in the papyrus. Here we can see a cathedral in Siena, which was decorated with occult-themed mosaics at the break of 15th and 16th century. The most interesting of these mosaics is one depicting the mythical founder of Hermetism, Hermes Trismegistos, as a contemporary and a teacher of Moses, to whom he hands his writing for studying. This mosaics is a unique testament to the fascination with rediscovered Hermetism during the Renaissance. In the next two slides, we can see illuminations from alchemic and magical codex. On the first slide, the illuminations coming from Codex Splendor Solis depict basic principles and rules of alchemy. On the second one, we can see illuminations from Codex Compendium Rarissimum depicting various forms of magical rituals and summoned demons. On the break of 18th and 19th century, we can observe numerous attempts to transmutate humans and the society through beauty in architecture. The group most active in this way were Freemasons, followed later by Theosophians and Anthroposophians. Several examples we can see here include the Neuschwanstein castle in Bavaria, which is amongst the most famous of the monumental feats of architecture and art realized by insane Bavarian King Ludwig II of Bavaria. Ludwig was a strong art enthusiast and also a very gullible person, easy to manipulate. This was used by Richard Wagner and an occultist, Theodorus, who abused Ludwig's mental state to realize their theories of transmutation of humans and the society through beauty. Another such example is the American Renaissance movement. Do not confuse it with the literary trend of American Renaissance, which refers to antebellum literature in United States. This political and architecture movement can be traced back to the idea of the United States as the Third Rome, being strongly influenced by the occult and Freemasons. Under this movement, many monumental reconstructions of American cities were carried out in neoclassicism and neo-antique styles. A classical example is the area of the Capitol and its architecture and landscaping, spreading all the way to the Lincoln Memorial. The last example is the statue of Isis by August Puttermans, a gift from the country of Belgium to the United States as an act of gratitude for their help with the famine in Belgium during World War I. It is an example of standardization of the occult symbols and interpretation of the ancient god and religions in contemporary art. On the next two slides, we can see the seat of a great occult society, the Geteanum. It was built in late 1920s according to anthroposophical ideas of perfect architecture. These days, the anthroposophist movement, founded by Rudolf Steiner, is the largest and the most successful of all occult movements. The most significant Czech anthroposophist was probably Tatiana Fischerová, who ran for president office in 2013. On this next slide, we can observe one of the examples of an attempt to transmutate humans through the environment, this time from Brno. The building is a classicist chateau built by Antonín Arnošt Mitrovský. His family resided in the city center. The chateau was used as a recreational facility and a casino. It was originally located in the middle of vast gardens. As Count Mitrovský was a member of Rising Sun Freemason Lodge in Brno, and Freemason logic was used during the construction. Unique frescoes imitating living nature and containing hidden Freemason symbols were preserved in the chateau to this day. On the next slide, we can see more examples of Freemasons architecture in Brno. On another two slides, I present examples of occult paints and their work. First, you can see the work of Austin Osman Spare, a British painter that studied animality and atavism of humans. He inspired the rise of postmodern magic. Next up, there are some examples of the works of Aita Kanun, a British surrealist painter. And this last slide is dedicated to the presentation of the occult in the music and film industry. Firstly, there is an invitation to the premiere of Mozart's opera, The Magic Flute. This is full of Freemason logic and symbols. Mozart was also a member of one of Freemason lodges in Brno. Next, we see a portrait of director of occult and art movies, a legend of American counterculture, Kenneth Anger. We can also see a scene from occult movie Lucifer Rising, on which he collaborated with the Rolling Stones. Anger worked with the Rolling Stones on several projects, but at the end the collaboration proved to be too frightening, even for the Rolling Stones, who ultimately terminated the collaboration. In the very last picture, you can see an album cover art to Swedish symphonic metal band Therion, which uses occult lyrics in their songs. There are many bands with occult lyrics these days, but Therion is typical by their multi-layered meanings. The band is connected to the Swedish occult order, the Dragon, which they actively propagate and is very serious about its occult activities. And it's all. Thank you for your attention.